The heart monitor's beeping cut through the sterile hospital air like a countdown to the inevitable. Each electronic pulse seemed weaker than the last, matching the fading rhythm of Frank Morrison's 70-year-old heart. Dad! Dad, can you hear me? Rachel's voice cracked, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling as they wrapped around Frank's weathered hand. Tears carved channels through her foundation, ruining the makeup she'd always been so careful about. Please, Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry about everything. David stood behind his wife, his jaw clenched so tight you could hear his teeth grinding. His hands gripped Rachel's shoulders, not in comfort, but like he was holding himself upright. The doctor said he might still be able to hear us, he muttered, though his eyes stayed fixed on the heart monitor's dropping numbers. Dad, if you can hear this, we're here, we're both here. Dr. Harrison entered quietly, his white coat making him look more like an angel of death than a healer. He checked the chart, shook his head slightly, that universal medical gesture that means there's nothing more we can do. Mr. Morrison's organs are shutting down sequentially. The ethylene glycol has done too much damage. We're looking at hours, maybe less. Rachel's sob was guttural, primal. This is my fault. Oh God, this is all my fault. Stop it, David snapped, but his voice carried no conviction. You couldn't have known. None of us could have known. The old man on the bed looked nothing like the Frank Morrison who'd once built half of Phoenix's skyline. His skin had taken on that waxy, translucent quality that comes right before the end. His breathing was shallow, labored, each exhale potentially his last. I need to tell him. Rachel suddenly pulled away from David, leaning close to Frank's ear. Dad, I need you to know. The insurance money, the house, none of it matters anymore. I just wanted, I just wanted to be part of a real family. Your family. Please forgive me. Please. David's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face going even paler. The lawyer's here. He says it's urgent. Something about the will. Now? Seriously? Rachel's grief transformed into rage in an instant. Your father is dying, and you're worried about. He says it's about Mother's estate. Something about a video. The mention of Margaret Morrison shifted something in the room's atmosphere. Even Frank's erratic breathing seemed to pause. Rachel wiped her eyes, smearing mascara across her cheek. What video? Margaret's been dead for 6 months. I don't know, but David stopped mid-sentence. Because something impossible was happening. Frank's eyes had opened, not the unfocused, morphine-glazed opening of a dying man. These eyes were sharp, and they were looking directly at Rachel with an expression that could only be described as amused. Dad? David stepped forward, his voice uncertain. Frank's cracked lips moved. Both David and Rachel leaned in to hear. You should have checked, Frank whispered, his voice like sandpaper on wood. The tea. Rachel jerked back as if slapped. What? Dad, what are you? But Frank's eyes had already closed again. The heart monitor's rhythm grew more erratic. Dr. Harrison rushed back in, pushing past them to check vitals. He's crashing. I need you both to step outside. No, Rachel grabbed the bed rail. I'm not leaving him. Ma'am, please, the heart monitor flatlined. That long, continuous beep that means only one thing. Dr. Harrison began CPR compressions. Nurses flooded the room. David pulled Rachel back, both of them stumbling into the hallway as the medical team worked. Rachel collapsed against the wall, hyperventilating. The tea? What did he mean about the tea? David's face had gone stone cold. You tell me. You're the one who's been making him that special herbal tea every night for the past 3 months. It was for his arthritis. The recipe was from... She stopped, her eyes widening. Oh my God! The recipe was from your mother. From Margaret. She gave it to me before she... Through the observation window, they watched the medical team working frantically. The defibrillator charged. Clear. Frank's body jolted. Nothing. Again. Clear. Another jolt. Time of death, Dr. Harrison's voice carried through the glass. 11:47 p.m. But as the doctor turned to record the time, nobody noticed Frank's finger twitch. Nobody saw the slight curl at the corner of his mouth. Because this story doesn't actually start here, in this hospital room with a dying man and his grieving family. No, this story starts 6 months ago, the day Margaret Morrison was buried. The day everyone thought was an ending but was actually the beginning of something far more sinister. 6 months earlier, Frank Morrison stood at the driving range, his form still perfect despite his age. The Phoenix sun beat down mercilessly, but he barely noticed. His phone rang just as he connected with the ball. A perfect drive, straight and true, just like the life he thought he'd built. Mr. Morrison? The voice was professional, clinical. This is Phoenix General. Your wife has been brought in. You need to come immediately. The golf club slipped from his fingers. Margaret, his Margaret, the woman who'd stood by him for 40 years, who'd given him purpose after Elizabeth's death, who'd never asked questions about the insurance payouts from his previous wives. She couldn't be dying. Not Margaret. Not when they'd finally reached the place in life where they could enjoy what they'd built together. But that's exactly what was happening. Or at least what everyone believed was happening. Because Margaret Morrison was many things. Devoted wife, grieving stepmother, secret keeper, but most of all she was a woman who understood that sometimes the best way to catch a killer is to become the bait. Even if that killer is your own husband. Even if the poison in your system is real. Even if the game you're playing requires you to die first. The question wasn't whether Frank had killed before. 3 dead wives tend to establish a pattern, even if the authorities never connected the dots. The question was whether he'd kill again, and Margaret was about to find out. 3 months before Margaret's death, the law office of Brennan and Associates occupied the entire 40th floor of the Hayden Tower, one of the buildings Frank Morrison had designed in his prime. As Frank stepped out of the elevator that September morning, he had no idea that the next 15 minutes would set in motion a chain of events that would destroy everything he thought he knew about his family. Frank, good to see you. Tom Brennan, senior partner and Margaret's personal attorney for 20 years, didn't quite meet Frank's eyes as he shook his hand. Thanks for coming on such short notice. Your message said it was urgent. Something about Margaret's estate planning? Frank followed Tom into the corner office, its floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing downtown Phoenix. She's not even sick, Tom. Why all the secrecy? Tom closed the door, locked it, actually, which struck Frank as odd. Before we begin, I need to confirm something. Margaret didn't tell you about the changes she made to her will? Changes? What changes? Frank's stomach tightened. We've always had mirror wills, everything to each other, then to David. Not anymore. Tom pulled out a sealed envelope from his safe. 3 weeks ago, Margaret came in alone. She was very specific about her instructions, and very clear that you weren't to know until it became necessary. Frank's hands trembled slightly as he took the envelope. Inside was a single page that would change everything. Last will and testament of Margaret Elizabeth Morrison. He read aloud, I hereby leave the entirety of my estate, including but not limited to all properties, investments, and personal belongings, to the person who demonstrates the most genuine care and dedication during my final year of life. He looked up at Tom, bewildered. What the hell is this? Some kind of competition? Tom shifted uncomfortably. That's not all, Frank. There's a video message. She insisted I play it for you if you came asking questions. The wall-mounted screen flickered to life. Margaret appeared, sitting in this very office, wearing the blue dress Frank had bought her for their anniversary. She looked directly at the camera, directly at him, with an expression he'd never seen before. Cold, calculating. Hello, Frank. If you're watching this, it means you've discovered my little test. Her voice was steady, without a trace of the warmth he'd known for 40 years. You see, darling, I've been doing some research. About Elizabeth. About Sophia. About Carol. Frank's blood turned to ice. Those names, his previous wives, Margaret had never mentioned them all together like that. Never with that tone. Interesting pattern, wouldn't you say? Margaret continued on the screen. 3 women. 3 insurance policies. 3 mysterious illnesses. And then there's me, wife number 4, suddenly developing these strange symptoms. Fatigue, nausea, heart palpitations. The same symptoms they all had. This is insane, Frank muttered, but Tom held up a hand for silence. So I've decided to conduct an experiment. Margaret's recorded voice went on. If I die within the next year, which seems increasingly likely, my entire estate goes to whoever truly cared for me. Not to the person who stands to gain the most, but to the person who sacrifices the most. And Frank, that $10 million portfolio I inherited from my father, the one you think is in our joint account, I moved it 6 months ago. It's mine alone now, and it will go to whoever passes my test. The screen went dark. Frank stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. She thinks I'm poisoning her? Tom, you've known me for 30 years. You know I would never. I don't know anything anymore, Frank. Tom's professional mask slipped for a moment. But I can tell you this. Margaret wasn't the only one who came to see me that week. What do you mean? Rachel was here 2 days later. Your daughter-in-law. Asking very specific questions about inheritance law in Arizona. About what happens if someone dies without a will. About how to contest an existing will. Frank sank into the leather chair. Rachel barely knew Margaret. They'd only met a few times before the wedding last year. That's what I thought too. But then, Tom hesitated, clearly debating how much to reveal. There was another visitor, a man named James Carter. Said he was Margaret's son from before she met you. That's impossible. Margaret couldn't have children. The doctors confirmed it years ago. He had documentation, Frank. Birth certificate, DNA test results, photos of him with Margaret from when he was young. He's been looking for her for 20 years. The room seemed to spin. Frank gripped the armrests to steady himself. Where is this James Carter now? He's in Phoenix. Has been for 6 months, apparently. Working as a nurse at Phoenix General. In the oncology ward where Margaret's been going for her treatments. What treatments? Margaret isn't sick. Tom's expression was grave. According to her medical records, she's been seeing an oncologist for the past 4 months. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer. She didn't want you to know. Frank felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Cancer. But she seems fine. She's been cooking, gardening, even planning that charity gala for next month. People can hide a lot when they're motivated, Frank. The question is, what was motivating Margaret? Before Frank could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Dad, emergency at the house. Come quickly, it's about Mom. Mom. Rachel had never called Margaret Mom before. Always Margaret. Or your wife. I have to go. Frank stood abruptly. Frank, wait. Tom handed him another envelope. Margaret left this too. Said to give it to you after you watched the video. I haven't opened it. Frank tore it open in the elevator. Inside was a single photo. Old, faded, black and white. It showed a young Margaret, maybe 20 years old, holding a baby. On the back, in Margaret's handwriting, James, 6 months old, 1983, the son I had to give away, the son you never knew about, the son who's been watching us for months. The elevator dinged. Ground floor. Frank walked out into the blazing Phoenix sun, his world fundamentally altered. His phone rang. David. Dad. Where are you? Rachel's freaking out. She found something in Mom's room. Some kind of, I don't know, Dad. It looks like Mom was keeping files on all of us, like she was investigating our whole family. I'm on my way. Dad, there's something else. There's a man here. Says his name is James Carter. Says he's Mom's son. He has a key to the house, Dad. Mom gave him a key. Frank ended the call and ran to his car. As he drove, one thought consumed him. If Margaret had been planning this for months, if she'd moved the money, changed her will, invited this mysterious son into their lives, then her death wouldn't be random. It would be orchestrated. The question was, by whom? And why? As he pulled into his driveway, Frank saw 3 cars he didn't recognize. Through the window, he could see Rachel, David, and a stranger, presumably James, standing in his living room. They were all looking at something spread out on the coffee table. Files. Dozens of them. Frank walked in to find his entire life laid bare in manila folders. His medical records, his financial statements, his previous wives' death certificates, police reports he thought had been sealed, insurance payouts he'd hidden even from his accountant. Rachel looked up at him, her face unreadable. Hello, Frank. I think it's time we all had an honest conversation about what really happened to Elizabeth, Sophia, and Carol. Don't you? David stood frozen, staring at a particular document. Dad, this says you increased each wife's life insurance just months before they died. Every single one. James Carter, tall, dark-haired, with Margaret's distinctive green eyes, smiled coldly. Hello, Father. Or should I say stepfather? Mother told me so much about you. Well, she told me before you started poisoning her. Anyway, Frank looked around the room at the 3 people who would compete for Margaret's inheritance. His son, his daughter-in-law, and this stranger who claimed to be family. You're all wrong, Frank said quietly. I'm not the one poisoning Margaret. No? Rachel stepped forward, holding up a small glass vial she'd found in Margaret's dresser. Then why did I find this hidden in your workshop? Ethylene glycol, the same substance found in Margaret's blood work last month. The trap was closing. But Frank knew something they didn't. That vial? He'd never seen it before in his life. Someone had planted it. The question was which one of them. 6 months after Margaret's funeral, the doorbell rang at exactly noon, just as Margaret had predicted it would. Frank stood frozen in his kitchen, coffee mug halfway to his lips, as the sound echoed through the empty house. He knew who it would be before he even looked through the peephole. Tom Brennan stood on his porch, briefcase in hand, accompanied by a courier and a police officer. Frank, Tom's voice was professionally neutral as Frank opened the door. As per Margaret's instructions, I'm here to deliver her posthumous message. The one she specified should be shared exactly 6 months after her passing. Tom, this is ridiculous. My wife is dead. Whatever game she was playing, I'm legally obligated to ensure all beneficiaries are present. Tom interrupted. I've already contacted David, Rachel, and James. They're on their way. 20 minutes later, Frank's living room felt like a courtroom. David sat rigid on the couch, Rachel beside him with her hand on his knee, but Frank noticed she was gripping hard enough to leave marks. James Carter stood by the window, arms crossed, those green eyes, Margaret's eyes, watching everything. Tom connected his laptop to the television. Before I play this video, I need everyone to understand that Margaret had this notarized, witnessed, and legally certified. Whatever she says in this recording has been verified as her words, spoken of her own free will while of sound mind. The screen came to life. Margaret appeared, but this wasn't the Margaret from her final days. Thin, frail, fading. This was Margaret from 8 months ago, vibrant and very much alive. She sat in what looked like a hotel room, natural light streaming through the windows behind her. "Hello, my darlings," she began, her voice carrying that musical quality Frank had fallen in love with decades ago. "If you're watching this, it means I've been dead for exactly 6 months. It also means one of you killed me." Rachel gasped. David's jaw dropped. James remained perfectly still. "Oh, don't look so shocked," Margaret continued, as if she could see their faces. "I know I was being poisoned. Have known for months, actually. The symptoms were quite obvious once I started looking for them. Fatigue that wasn't natural, heart palpitations that came like clockwork after meals, the metallic taste that lingered no matter how much water I drank." She held up a small device to the camera, a testing kit of some kind. "Ethylene glycol, antifreeze, classic choice. Sweet taste, slow acting, mimics natural illness. The killer probably thought they were being clever. But you see, I've been testing everything I eat and drink for the past year. I know exactly when the poisoning started. I know how it was administered. And I know who did it." Frank felt every eye in the room turn to him. But here's the interesting part. Margaret's image leaned forward, her smile sharp as a blade. "I didn't stop it, I let it continue. I documented every dose, every symptom, every deterioration. Why? Because I needed to know something. I needed to know who among you would save me, and who would watch me die." She paused, taking a sip from a teacup. Deliberate, theatrical. "Frank, my devoted husband, you noticed the symptoms first, didn't you? Yet you never suggested I see a doctor, never asked about my medications, just watched, waiting, just like you did with Elizabeth, with Sophia, with Carol. This is insane." Frank burst out, but Tom raised a hand for silence. "Rachel, my son's beautiful wife, you were so attentive, weren't you? Bringing me special teas for my arthritis, insisting on cooking for me when I felt too weak, never missing a single Sunday dinner. Tell me, dear, where did you really train as a nurse? Because the credentials you showed David were remarkably well forged." Rachel's face had gone pale as paper. "David, my sweet boy, or should I say Elizabeth's sweet boy. Oh yes, I know you're not Frank's biological son. Your mother had an affair, Frank never knew. I've protected that secret for 38 years. But you knew, didn't you? You've always known. Is that why you were so eager to help with my medications? To make sure I got the right doses?" David looked like he might vomit. "And James, my darling James, the son I gave up for adoption when I was 17. The son who magically appeared in my life just as I started getting sick. What a coincidence. Tell me, when did the FBI recruit you? Before or after you discovered who your birth mother was?" James's composure finally cracked. "What?" Margaret laughed on the screen. Not a pleasant sound. "Oh, you're all so transparent. Each of you with your little secrets, your hidden agendas, your reasons for wanting me dead. But here's what none of you knew. I've been taking activated charcoal capsules with every meal for the past 8 months. Absorbs most toxins quite effectively. The symptoms you saw, mostly theatrical. I'm quite proud of my performance, actually." The room erupted, everyone talking at once, denying, accusing, defending. Tom had to shout to restore order. Margaret's voice cut through the chaos from the TV. "Enough." They all turned back to the screen. "The poisoner is in that room right now, and I have proof. Irrefutable, documented, legally admissible proof. Tom has it in his briefcase. But before he reveals it, I want to share something else." The camera angle changed. Now Margaret was standing in what was clearly Frank's home office, pointing at something on the wall. "This is Frank's collection of insurance policies. 3 dead wives, 3 payouts, nearly $12 million total. But look closer." She moved to the desk, picking up documents. "These aren't Frank's signatures. Oh, they look like his writing, but I had them analyzed. Someone else signed these policies. Someone who stood to gain if Frank was implicated in murder. Someone who's been planning this for decades." She turned back to the camera, and for the first time Frank saw fear in her eyes. "The person poisoning me isn't trying to kill me for money. They're trying to frame Frank for my murder, just like they framed him for the others. The real killer has been hiding in plain sight, playing the long game, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy him completely." A timer appeared on the screen. 30 seconds. In 30 seconds, Tom will receive an encrypted file with the killer's identity, but I want to give them one chance. Confess now, and the evidence stays sealed. Continue this charade, and everything goes to the police. Everything, including proof of your other crimes. The countdown began. 29, 28, 27. Frank looked around the room. Rachel's hands were shaking. David had tears streaming down his face. James stood frozen, his hand moving unconsciously toward his hip, where a service weapon would be. 15, 13. "It's not me," Frank said quietly. I loved Margaret. I love all of you. 10, 9, 8. We need to stop this. Rachel stood suddenly. Tom, turn it off. 5, 4, 3. David shouted. I have something to say. 2, 1. The screen went black. Tom's phone buzzed. He looked at it, his face going pale. The file, it's not what I expected. What does it say? Frank demanded. Tom looked up, his expression stunned. It says Margaret Morrison is still alive. The room went dead silent. Then from the doorway, a familiar voice spoke. Hello, everyone. Did you miss me? They all turned in unison. Margaret Morrison stood in the doorway, very much alive, holding a cup of tea and smiling like a cat who'd caught an entire family of mice. The woman standing in the doorway looked like Margaret Morrison, sounded like Margaret Morrison, but Frank knew with absolute certainty that something was fundamentally wrong. The way she held herself straighter, more confident. The slight smile that didn't reach her eyes. This wasn't the woman he'd been married to for 40 years. Margaret? David's voice cracked like a teenager's. Mom? But we buried you. I saw your body. You saw a body, Margaret corrected, stepping into the room with casual elegance. Amazing what a good mortician can do with makeup and a closed casket viewing. The real question is, whose body did you bury? Rachel had backed against the wall, her face cycling through shock, rage, and something that looked oddly like admiration. This is impossible. The death certificate, the autopsy report. All forgeable with the right connections, Margaret interrupted, settling into her favorite armchair as if she'd never left. James here can tell you all about that. Can't you, Special Agent Carter? Everyone turned to James, who had pulled out his FBI badge with a resigned expression. 3 years undercover, he said quietly, investigating a series of suspicious deaths tied to insurance fraud. Your name kept coming up, Frank. But you said you were my son. Margaret laughed, a sound like breaking glass. No, dear, I said he was someone's son. You all just assumed the rest. She turned to Frank, her green eyes cold as winter. Just like you assumed I was dying. Just like you assumed you were safe. Frank's mind was reeling, but something Margaret had said earlier was echoing in his head. He pulled out his phone, his fingers moving with sudden purpose. What are you doing? David demanded. Something I should have done months ago. Frank's voice had changed, no longer the confused elderly man, but sharp focused, checking Margaret's email. You don't know my password, Margaret said, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her voice. I didn't, but you see, Margaret, when you fake your death, you tend to get sloppy. You use the hotel's Wi-Fi to send those videos to Tom, same hotel where you've been staying under the name Elizabeth Carter. He looked up at her. Elizabeth, my first wife's name. Cute. His phone buzzed. Email after email loading. Frank's expression darkened as he read. The Black Widows Forum, he said slowly. You're not just a member, you're the founder. Queen Bee 47, the age you were when we met. Rachel grabbed the phone, her eyes widening as she scrolled. Oh my God. There are dozens of women on here, all sharing techniques for... It's quite a supportive community, actually. We help each other with alibis, methods, legal loopholes. Like a book club, but more profitable. You're insane, David whispered. Am I? Margaret stood, walking to the window. Frank, tell them about your first wife. Tell them how Elizabeth really died. Frank's jaw clenched. She had a heart condition. She was 28 years old and healthy as a horse until she married you. Margaret turned back to face them all. But that's not the interesting part. James, excuse me, Agent Carter. Would you like to share what the FBI found when they exhumed Elizabeth's body last month? James looked uncomfortable but pulled out a tablet. Digitalis. Massive amounts, it's a heart medication, but in high doses. It causes exactly the kind of heart failure Elizabeth supposedly died from, Margaret finished. But here's where it gets really interesting. Frank couldn't have poisoned Elizabeth. He was in Seattle that entire week working on a project, verified by dozens of witnesses. Then who? David started, then stopped, his face going white. No, Margaret's smile was triumphant. Tell them, Frank, tell them who was taking care of poor sick Elizabeth while you were away. Frank's voice was barely a whisper. Margaret, my secretary at the time. We weren't even dating yet. I was so helpful, wasn't I? Bringing her soup, making sure she took her medicine, comforting you after her tragic death. And then, what a coincidence, we fell in love 6 months later. The room was silent except for the sound of Rachel's rapid breathing. She was having a panic attack. Sophia and Carol, Frank said, his voice stronger now, pieces falling into place. You killed them too. Sophia was cheating on you with your business partner. She was going to take half of everything in the divorce. Carol was a gold digger who would have bled you dry. I was protecting you, Frank. Protecting us. You're a serial killer, James stated flatly, his hand moving to his service weapon. I'm a problem solver, Margaret corrected. And right now we have a problem. You see, I've been watching all of you for the past 6 months. The cameras in this house aren't Frank's. They're mine. And what I've discovered is absolutely fascinating. She pulled out her own phone, swiping through screens. Rachel, or should I say Rebecca Chen? Yes, dear, I know your real name. Daughter of Walter Chen, who Frank destroyed in a business deal 20 years ago. Your father killed himself, didn't he? And you've spent the last 5 years planning your revenge. Marrying David was just step one. Rachel's mask finally slipped completely. He destroyed my family. David, Margaret continued, ignoring Rachel's outburst. Sweet, innocent David, who's been slowly poisoning his father for 3 months with antifreeze in his coffee. Oh, you didn't know I knew? I have video of you purchasing it, mixing it, serving it. You found out Frank killed your biological mother, didn't you? David was shaking. He murdered her. She was my real mom, and he murdered her. Except he didn't, Margaret said simply. I did, but you were so ready to believe the worst of him, weren't you? Frank staggered to a chair, the weight of the revelations crushing him. His son had been poisoning him. His daughter-in-law was a fraud seeking revenge. His wife was a serial killer who'd been murdering women for 40 years. And James, Margaret turned to the FBI agent. Not really FBI, are you? Private investigator hired by the insurance companies, playing federal agent to get access to sealed records. That badge is as fake as my death certificate. James didn't deny it. His hand remained on his weapon. So here we all are. Margaret spread her arms wide. A room full of liars, killers, and frauds. The question is, what do we do now? Frank stood slowly, his body language changing completely. The confused old man was gone. In his place stood someone none of them had seen before. You're right about one thing, Margaret. We are all liars here. He walked to the bookshelf, pulling out a specific volume. Behind it was a hidden camera. But you're wrong about the cameras being yours. I've been recording everything for 2 years. Ever since I found your first journal. Margaret's confidence wavered. What journal? The one you kept about Elizabeth. About how much you loved me even then. About how she didn't deserve me. About how easy it was to increase her medication each day. Frank pulled out a leather-bound book. You hid it in the attic, inside the Christmas decorations. You always did leave the decorating to me. That doesn't prove anything, Margaret said. But her voice had lost its edge. No, but this does. Frank turned to James. You're not a private investigator. You're Margaret's son. Her actual son. DNA test confirmed it 3 months ago when you both got sloppy and used the same coffee cup. James's face went through several expressions before settling on resignation. She contacted me a year ago. Told me Frank had killed my birth father. Promised me half the insurance money if I helped frame him. Except there is no insurance money. Frank continued. I canceled all the policies 6 months ago, right after I found out Margaret was alive. The 10 million she thought she was playing for, it doesn't exist. You're lying. Margaret snarled. Tom? Frank turned to the lawyer who had been silent throughout the confrontation. Tell her. Tom cleared his throat. Frank restructured everything 6 months ago. All assets were moved to an irrevocable trust. The beneficiary is the Phoenix Children's Hospital. In the event of his death, natural or otherwise, they get everything. The room exploded into chaos. Rachel lunged at Margaret. David tried to stop her. James drew his weapon, which turned out to be real after all. And in the midst of it all, Frank walked calmly to the front door and opened it. You can all come in now, he called out. A SWAT team poured into the house, followed by several legitimate FBI agents, including Special Agent Sarah Foster, who looked at the frozen tableau with satisfaction. Margaret Morrison, Rebecca Chen, David Morrison, James Morrison, you're all under arrest. The charges include murder, attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy, and about a dozen other things we'll sort out downtown. As the handcuffs clicked on Margaret's wrists, she looked at Frank with something approaching respect. When did you figure it all out? The day you died, Frank admitted. You were too perfect in those final moments. Too prepared. Real dying people don't tie up loose ends that neatly. So I started investigating everyone, including myself. Hired real FBI. Found the bodies. Found the forum. Found the truth. Why didn't you stop me earlier? Frank's expression was infinitely sad. Because part of me still loved you. Still hoped I was wrong. But when you let David poison me, your own stepson, thinking he was avenging his mother, I knew you were beyond redemption. As they led her away, Margaret called back. The game's not over, Frank. You haven't found all my pieces yet. Frank watched them all being taken away. His wife, his son, his daughter-in-law, the stranger who was actually his stepson. In 5 minutes, he'd gone from victim to victor, from prey to predator. But standing in his empty house, he'd never felt more alone. Agent Foster approached him. We'll need your full statement. And Mr. Morrison, there's something else. We found another body in your backyard. Fresh, maybe 2 weeks old. Frank's blood ran cold. Who? We're running DNA now. But there was a note in the pocket.
It just says the real Margaret Morrison. Love Queen Bee 47. Frank looked back at the woman being put into the police car. If that wasn't Margaret, then who had he been living with for 40 years? Agent Foster pulled out an evidence bag containing a small silver locket. We found this on the body. Do you recognize it? Frank's hands trembled as he took the bag. Through the clear plastic he could see the engraved initials, MEM Margaret Elizabeth Morrison, the locket he'd given her on their first anniversary. That's impossible, he whispered. Margaret was wearing this at her funeral. I saw it. Mr. Morrison, Agent Foster's voice was gentle but firm. I need you to consider something very carefully. Is there any possibility that the woman we just arrested isn't your wife? That she's been impersonating Margaret for some period of time? Frank's mind raced back through the past few years. Small things he'd dismissed. The way Margaret suddenly stopped playing piano, claimed arthritis, but her hands were fine for everything else. How she'd forgotten their anniversary date twice. The sudden change in her coffee preference. Her handwriting that got slightly different after her illness started. Oh my God. Frank sank onto the porch steps. About 2 years ago, Margaret went to visit her sister in Portland. She was gone for 3 weeks. When she came back, she seemed different, more confident, more sexual. I thought it was just a midlife thing. Agent Foster made notes. We'll need that sister's contact information. She doesn't have a sister, Frank said numbly. I called the hotel in Portland 6 months ago, when I started suspecting something. They had no record of Margaret Morrison staying there. So for 2 years, you've been living with someone who might not be your wife. Frank looked at the woman in the police car. She was watching him through the window, and when their eyes met, she winked. Not Margaret's gentle, loving wink. This was predatory, triumphant. The real question, Frank said slowly, standing up with new determination, is whether my real wife is still alive somewhere. And if she is, he turned to Agent Foster, his expression hard as granite. Then I'm going to find her. Foster nodded. We'll put a rush on that DNA test. In the meantime, Mr. Morrison, you'll need to come with us for your protection. If this woman isn't Margaret, and the real Margaret is dead in your backyard, then someone went to extraordinary lengths to frame you for multiple murders. This isn't over. As Frank walked to the FBI vehicle, he heard the fake Margaret call out from the police car. Ask yourself this, Frank. If I'm not Margaret, how did I know every intimate detail of your life? Every secret, every password, every memory. Frank paused but didn't turn around. Because the real Margaret told you, before you killed her. The woman's laughter followed him all the way to the car, cold, calculating, and completely insane. But Frank Morrison was no longer the prey in this story. The hunter had finally awakened, and he would not rest until he found the truth, all of it, even if that truth destroyed everything he thought he knew about the last 40 years of his life. The shift was complete. From this moment forward, Frank would no longer be reacting to others' moves. He would be the one setting the board, placing the pieces, controlling the game. The transition from victim to predator was absolute and irreversible. Tomorrow, the real investigation would begin, and God help anyone who stood in his way.
FBI safe house. Phoenix, 72 hours after the arrests. The digital clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m. when Frank heard it, the soft hiss of gas seeping through the ventilation system. He'd been lying awake, unable to sleep despite the FBI's assurances of safety, and that sound made his blood freeze. Foster, Frank rolled out of bed, grabbing his phone. No signal. The landline was dead. Agent Foster. The 2 agents stationed outside his door didn't respond. Frank pressed his ear against the door. Nothing. No footsteps, no radio chatter, no breathing, just the continuous, deadly whisper of gas filling the house. His engineering background kicked in. Hydrogen sulfide from the smell. Heavier than air, it would pool at ground level first. He grabbed towels, soaking them in the bathroom sink, stuffing them under the door. The window sealed from the outside. Security measure that had become a death trap. Then his laptop chimed. A video call coming through, which should have been impossible since the Wi-Fi was supposedly disabled. Frank accepted it with trembling fingers. The fake Margaret's face filled the screen. But she was still in federal custody, or was she? Hello, Frank, enjoying your protective custody. She was sitting in what looked like a luxury hotel room, sipping champagne. Oh, don't worry about the gas, it's not lethal. Well, not immediately. You have about 2 hours before permanent brain damage sets in. You're supposed to be in jail. I am in jail. Check the news if you don't believe me. Wonderful thing about technology. You can be in 2 places at once these days. She leaned forward. But we need to talk about something more important, about who I really am. Frank's vision was already starting to blur at the edges. The towels weren't enough. My name is Victoria Morrison, she continued. Margaret's twin sister. The sister she never told you about. The one who was supposed to die at birth but didn't. The one our parents gave away because they couldn't handle twins. Margaret didn't have of course she never told you. Perfect Margaret, with her perfect life, her perfect husband, while I grew up in foster homes. learning to survive by any means necessary. But I found her eventually, 2 years ago. That trip to Portland, she came to meet me. Frank's legs were getting weak. He sat on the floor, laptop balanced on his knees, trying to stay above the accumulating gas. She was dying, Frank. Really dying. Pancreatic cancer. Just like she told you. But here's the beautiful irony. We were perfect genetic matches. Same blood type, same bone structure, even the same voice with a little practice. She had an idea, a terrible, wonderful idea. The screen split. Security footage appeared on the right side. The real Margaret, frail and clearly ill, talking to Victoria in a hotel room. She wanted to die on her own terms. Victoria's voice continued over the footage. But more than that, she wanted to know the truth about you, about whether you'd killed Elizabeth, Sophia, and Carol. So we made a deal. She would teach me everything about her life, every detail, every memory, every secret. And I would take her place, run her test, find out if you were a killer. But you killed her, Frank gasped, his chest tightening. No, Frank, she killed herself. Morphine overdose, peaceful and planned. But not before she recorded dozens of hours of video testimony about your marriages, about her suspicions, about the evidence she'd found. It's all in a safety deposit box, waiting to be discovered if anything happens to me. A loud crash came from downstairs. Frank heard footsteps, multiple sets, moving fast. Ah, they're here. Victoria smiled. My real partners. You see, your son David made bail an hour ago. Funny how a good lawyer can work miracles. And Rachel, well, she was never really in custody. The FBI agent who arrested her was one of ours. James is probably the only one actually sitting in a cell right now, poor thing. The door to Frank's room exploded inward. David stood there wearing a gas mask, Rachel beside him similarly protected. But it was the third figure that made Frank's heart stop. Dr. Marcus Webb, his trusted friend, stepped forward holding a syringe. Hello, Frank, Marcus said through his mask, his voice muffled but recognizable. Sorry about the deception, but Victoria pays much better than the FBI. You were all working together, Frank wheezed, the gas making his thoughts sluggish. Not all, Victoria corrected from the laptop screen. This is more like a confluence of interests. David wants revenge for his mother. Rachel wants revenge for her father. Marcus wants the money I promised him, and I want what Margaret promised me. Everything you took from her by keeping her trapped in a loveless marriage for 40 years. I loved Margaret. You loved controlling her. You loved having the perfect wife who never questioned where the money came from, who never asked about your previous wives, who played the dutiful spouse while you built your empire on blood money. David stepped forward, his eyes cold behind the gas mask. Dad, just tell us the truth. Did you kill my mother? Did you kill Elizabeth? Frank tried to stand but collapsed back down. The room was spinning. I swear I didn't kill anyone. Wrong answer, Rachel said, producing a document. Sign this confession. Admit to killing all 4 wives, Elizabeth, Sophia, Carol, and Margaret. Sign it and we'll turn off the gas. Refuse and, well, the brain damage will make you sign eventually anyway. But Margaret killed them, Frank protested weakly. The real Margaret. She admitted it. The real Margaret is dead, Victoria laughed from the screen, and dead women tell no tales. But you, Frank, you're still alive, for now, and your signature on this confession will close 4 cold cases and make everyone happy. The FBI gets their serial killer, the insurance companies get their fraud resolution, and we all get very, very rich. Marcus knelt beside Frank, syringe ready. This will help with the discomfort, Frank. Just a little something to make you more cooperative. Wait, Frank managed to say, his hand reaching into his pajama pocket. Before you do this, you should know something. He pulled out a small device, a recording transmitter. This has been broadcasting everything to the real FBI for the last 10 minutes. The real safe house is 3 blocks away. This was a decoy. The color drained from David's face behind his mask. That's impossible. We cut the communications. Satellite uplink, Frank whispered, a grim smile on his face. Battery powered. Old tech from my army days. Sometimes analog beats digital. Through the window, flashing red and blue lights suddenly illuminated the room. Sirens wailed. Victoria's face on the laptop screen went from confident to furious. You knew, she snarled. You knew we were coming. Agent Foster suspected someone inside was dirty, so we set a trap, and you all walked right into it. The sound of FBI agents storming the building echoed through the house. David dropped the confession papers. Rachel backed toward the window. Marcus dropped the syringe and ran. But Frank's vision was going dark. The gas had been real, even if the house wasn't. As consciousness faded, he heard Victoria's last words from the laptop. This isn't over, Frank. You still don't know the whole truth about Margaret, about Elizabeth, about yourself. The real game hasn't even started yet. Then everything went black. Phoenix General Hospital, 48 hours after the gas attack. Frank woke to the sound of rain against hospital windows and a familiar voice reading beside his bed. For a moment, his heart stopped. It sounded exactly like Margaret. But when he turned his head, he saw Agent Foster holding an old leather journal. "These are Margaret's real diaries," Foster said, noticing he was awake. "We found them in a safety deposit box at Wells Fargo. Frank, you need to hear this." She began reading aloud. "March 15th, 20 years ago. Today I discovered the truth about Frank's wives. He didn't kill them. I did, and I'm going to tell him tonight at dinner. I can't live with this secret anymore." Frank struggled to sit up, his head still foggy from the gas exposure. "What? But that entry, that would mean Margaret knew she was a killer 20 years ago?" "Keep listening," Foster continued reading. "March 16th. I couldn't do it. When I looked at Frank across the dinner table, so trusting, so loving, I realized the truth would destroy him. He thinks his wives died naturally. He never suspected me. How could he? I was always the supportive friend, the helpful secretary, the caring girlfriend. I've decided to take this secret to my grave." "This doesn't make sense," Frank muttered. "Victoria said Margaret only recently discovered." The door opened. David walked in, not in handcuffs but free, wearing an FBI visitor's badge. "Dad," David said quietly, "I need to tell you something. I've been working with the real FBI for 3 years. I'm not your son. I'm Agent David Chen, Rachel's brother." Frank felt the world tilt. "What?" David, or Agent Chen, pulled out his real badge. "The David Morrison you raised died in a car accident 5 years ago in Thailand. He was backpacking, alone. No one here knew. When the FBI discovered you might be a serial killer, they needed someone inside. I studied David's entire life, had minor plastic surgery, and took his place when I returned from Asia." "5 years," Frank's voice cracked. "You've been pretending to be my son for 5 years. We had to know the truth about those women's deaths. But Frank, here's what we discovered. You're innocent. Completely innocent. You never killed anyone. But Margaret did, and she wasn't alone." Foster picked up the story. "Marcus Webb wasn't just your friend, Frank. He was Margaret's first husband, married when they were 18, annulled when they were 19. But they never stopped loving each other. Every one of your wives? Marcus helped Margaret kill them." Frank's mind reeled. "Marcus and Margaret? They'd been planning this for 40 years, Agent Chen continued. "Margaret would marry wealthy men. Marcus would help eliminate any obstacles like previous wives, and they'd split the insurance money. You were supposed to be just another Mark. But something went wrong. She fell in love with you," Foster said, returning to the diary. "Listen to this entry from 10 years ago. I can't do it anymore. Frank is different from the others. He truly loves me. Marcus wants me to poison him like we planned, but I can't. I told Marcus it's over. He says I'll regret this." Agent Chen sat down beside the bed. "That's when Marcus started planning his own revenge. He couldn't kill Margaret directly. She knew too much about him, so he found Victoria. Victoria isn't Margaret's twin," Foster revealed. "She's Marcus's daughter from his second marriage. He trained her, groomed her, taught her to impersonate Margaret. The plan was to replace Margaret, frame you for all the murders, and take everything." Frank's head was spinning. "But the video calls with Margaret planning all this." "Deepfakes," Chen explained. "Marcus had hours of footage of Margaret. With today's technology, he could make her say anything. The real Margaret died 2 years ago, not from murder, but from the pancreatic cancer. She died believing you were innocent, Frank. Her last words, according to the hospice nurse, were 'Tell Frank I'm sorry for everything.' Then the body in my backyard? A homeless woman who died of natural causes. Marcus stole the body from the morgue, planted it with Margaret's locket. He's been playing everyone, Victoria, Rachel, even me initially. He wanted you broken, destroyed, convicted. It was never about money. It was about revenge for Margaret choosing you over him." Foster's phone buzzed. She answered, her face going pale. "What?" When she looked at Frank. "Marcus Webb just walked into Phoenix PD and confessed to everything. But he says he'll only talk to you." An hour later, Frank sat across from Marcus in the interrogation room. His old friend looked smaller somehow, older, defeated. "Hello, Frank," Marcus said quietly. "I suppose you know everything now. I know you killed innocent women. I know you corrupted your own daughter. I know you destroyed my family. What I don't know is why you're confessing now." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Because I won, don't you see? Your son is dead. Has been for years. Your wife died thinking she was a monster. Your daughter-in-law was a plant. Everyone you loved was either fake or dead. I took everything from you without laying a finger on you." "You're wrong," Frank said steadily. "Margaret died knowing I loved her. She died protecting me from the truth about her past. And David, the real David, died doing what he loved, exploring the world. You didn't take that from me. But now you know the truth, that your entire life was built on lies and murder." Frank stood up. No, Marcus. My life was built on love. Imperfect, complicated, sometimes misguided love. Margaret loved me enough to change, to stop killing, to choose redemption. That's what you never understood. Love isn't possession, it's transformation. Marcus's composure finally cracked. She was supposed to be mine. We planned everything together. We were going to be rich, powerful, untouchable. Then you came along with your genuine kindness, your real affection, and she threw it all away for what? For normalcy. For boring, suburban happiness? For peace, Frank said simply. She chose peace, and that's something you'll never have. As Frank walked out, Foster was waiting with a tablet. There's one more thing, Mr. Morrison. We found a safety deposit box Margaret kept that Marcus didn't know about. There's a video message for you. Do you want to see it? Frank nodded. On the screen, the real Margaret appeared, thin from cancer but smiling. Frank, if you're watching this, it means the truth has come out. I'm sorry for everything. For Elizabeth, Sophia, and Carol. For the lies, for the pain. But I need you to know that the years we had together, after I stopped the killing, those were real. My love for you was real. You saved me, Frank. You showed me what real love looked like. And that's why I'm going to make sure Marcus never hurts you. By the time you see this, I'll have made sure you're protected. The FBI knows everything. Marcus will pay, and you'll be free. I love you, forever and always. The screen went dark. Frank stood there for a long moment, processing everything. Then Agent Foster handed him one final document. Mr. Morrison, there's a significant reward for solving these cold cases. $3 million. It's yours if you want it. Frank looked at the check, then tore it in half. Give it to the families of Elizabeth, Sophia, and Carol. They deserve closure and compensation. I just want to go home. But he knew home would never be the same. The house was empty. The family was gone. The truth had set him free. But freedom, he realized, could be the loneliest place of all. 6 months later, Phoenix Superior Court. The judge's gavel came down with finality. Marcus Webb, for the murders of Elizabeth Morrison, Sophia Morrison, and Carol Morrison. This court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the conspiracy to frame Frank Morrison, an additional 25 years. For the murder of Margaret Morrison by coercion and psychological manipulation leading to her suicide, another life sentence. Frank sat in the gallery's front row, feeling nothing. Not satisfaction, not relief, just emptiness. Beside him, Agent Foster, Sarah, as she'd asked him to call her after all these months, placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. It's over, Frank. Finally over. But was it? As they led Marcus away in shackles, he turned to Frank one last time. You want to know the real tragedy, Frank? Margaret's final secret? Ask yourself why she really chose you. Ask yourself about the fire. Before Frank could respond, Marcus was gone, disappeared into the bowels of the justice system. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Frank walked past them in silence. Victoria had been sentenced a month earlier, 20 years for impersonation, fraud, and attempted murder. Rachel Chen, or Rebecca as she really was, got 15 years. The fake David Agent Chen had returned to his real life, leaving Frank truly alone. That evening, Frank stood in his empty house packing boxes. He couldn't live here anymore. Too many ghosts, too many lies embedded in the walls. As he wrapped a picture frame, something Margaret had said in her video message kept echoing. By the time you see this, I'll have made sure you're protected. Protected from what? Marcus was already caught by then. What else had she been protecting him from? His phone rang. Tom Brennan, the lawyer. Frank, I found something in Margaret's papers. Something I missed before. Can you come to my office tonight? It's about a fire. From 1979. Frank's blood chilled. The fire, Marcus's final words. An hour later, Tom handed him a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, Tragic fire claims 3 lives. Young father survives. Frank, Tom said carefully, this is about you, isn't it? You were 24. Your parents and younger brother died in a house fire. You inherited everything, the insurance money that started your construction empire. Frank's hands trembled. It was an accident. The investigation proved it. Faulty wiring. Look at the second page, Tom said quietly. There was a photo of the young Frank being comforted by a teenage girl. The caption read, Survivor Franklin Morrison receives support from Margaret Mills, 17, volunteer grief counselor. She knew you before, Tom continued. Years before you supposedly met at work. Frank, Margaret's diary has an entry from that time. She writes about falling in love with a young man who'd lost everything. She writes about wanting to give him a new life, a better life. Frank sank into the chair. No, no, that's not possible. Tom pulled out Margaret's diary, the real one from 1979. He read, I met him today, Franklin Morrison, so broken, so lost. His family died in a fire. The investigators think it might have been arson, but they can't prove it. He keeps saying he smelled gasoline before it started. I believe him. Someone murdered his family. I'm going to find out who, and then I'm going to make sure Frank gets the life he deserves. She investigated, Tom continued. For 3 years she investigated, and she found the real killer, your business partner at the time, Richard Webb. Richard Webb, Frank whispered. Marcus's older brother. He died in 1982. Car accident. Not an accident. Margaret's diary details how she tampered with his brakes. Her first kill. For you, to avenge your family. Tom closed the diary. She loved you before you even knew she existed, Frank. Everything that followed, becoming your secretary, eliminating your wives who she saw as obstacles, marrying you, it was all part of a 40-year plan to give you the perfect life. Frank stood up, walked to the window. The Phoenix skyline stretched before him, buildings he'd designed, a legacy built on blood and love and obsession. So Marcus knew, Frank said finally. His brother died because of me. His wife chose me. Everything he lost was because Margaret loved me from the start. There's more, Tom said. Margaret left one final safety deposit box. She said to give it to you only after Marcus was convicted. Inside the box was a single USB drive. Frank plugged it into Tom's computer. Margaret appeared on screen one last time. But this was recent, just days before her death. Frank, my darling Frank, if you're watching this, you know everything now. The truth about the fire, about Richard, about why I chose you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. But I need you to understand. Every life I took, every lie I told, every sin I committed, it was all for one purpose, to give you the life that was stolen from you that night in 1979. I know it doesn't justify anything. I know I'm a monster. But I was a monster who loved you completely. And in the end, that love changed me. You changed me. You made me want to be better, even though it was too late. Marcus will tell you I'm evil. Victoria will say I'm a killer. The world will call me a black widow. And they're all right. But to you, I was just Margaret. You're Margaret. And that's the only truth that ever mattered to me. Live frank. Live free of all of this. Find someone who loves you the right way, the healthy way. Be happy. That's all I ever wanted. For you to be happy. Goodbye, my love. Forever and always. The screen went dark. Frank sat in silence for a long moment. Then he stood, took the USB drive, and handed it to Tom. Destroy it, he said. Destroy everything. The diaries, the videos, all of it. Frank, this is evidence. The case is closed. Marcus is in prison. Victoria's in prison. Rachel's in prison. Margaret's dead. The truth has been told in court. Everything else is just pain. Let it burn. Tom nodded slowly. What will you do now? Frank walked to the door, paused. I'm going to sell everything. The house, the business, all of it. I'm going to take whatever's left after the settlements to the victims' families, and I'm going to disappear. Start over somewhere where nobody knows the name Frank Morrison. Running away won't change what happened. No, Frank agreed. But staying here surrounded by the ghosts of women who died for a love I never asked for, that's not living. That's just another form of prison. He walked out of Tom's office for the last time. Tomorrow he would begin the process of erasing Frank Morrison from existence. It was the only way to truly be free. As he drove home through the dark Phoenix streets, Frank thought about Margaret's final words. Be happy. Maybe, somewhere far from here, with a new name and a new life he could try. It was the best he could hope for. The best any of them could hope for. Justice had been served, but it tasted like ashes. The truth had set him free. But freedom felt like exile. And love, twisted, obsessive, murderous love, had destroyed everything it touched. But Frank Morrison would survive. He always had. Even when survival felt like the cruelest punishment of all.